Welcome, everybody, to a special Tuesday edition of What the Tech. We are doing a special interview with the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, a man that needs no introduction, Paul Thurrott.
Wow, and yet there it was.
Yeah, a good introduction, right?
It was nice. I wish Leo would do that.
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, you've been working with it. If you're back here every week, I'm sure it just goes through. And here's Tom.
Here he is again. Okay.
Here's Tom, everybody. How you doing, Tom?
Here's that guy.
There's Tom.
Yeah. At least Tom is in widescreen. We went through this whole ordeal.
I'm not in widescreen, am I?
No.
Here's the story. I had this. Still have a beautiful HD webcam from Microsoft.
The LifeCam, right? The LifeCam Studio Cinema.
The nice one, and it looks awful when I do the podcast with Leo. So after weeks of complaining, I finally got rid of it. But if I'm not mistaken, I don't remember if we ever used it together, but I bought it because you were talking about it, and your video looks great, and it worked. It worked in widescreen. It would probably work now if I had it plugged in. Sorry.
You know, here's the thing with that. Skype has been really funny with that camera. I did that review when it came out, and it catapulted my career, Paul. Just this one review. It's the reason why. It's the reason why I'm making the big bucks now, and I am where I am.
I bought one the second you said something.
Yeah.
About
See, Paul Thurrott, listen to my video. So I bought it. It doesn't work with Skype because Skype needs an H.264 encoded webcam to work with it. So it's only a handful of cameras. I think it's the Face Vision something, the Free Talk something, and then the C910 from Logitech.
C910. See, I have a C. I want to say it's a C9000. Is that
the
possible?
you have the 9000.
It's old.
These are old, and that's an HD camera, but it doesn't work with Skype because Skype is demanding the hardware encoding.
See, now as you're talking, I'm going to order another camera. This is what I do every time I come on your show.
You know what? I have 4 of them sitting here. I will send you one.
We will hook you up.
I'm telling you, Paul.
I'll see you if you're going to come. I can see. I'll see you in a couple weeks. Maybe.
Yeah, so I'll bring it to you because I have 4 of them sitting here. I bought them for the studio to do another review, and I absolutely hate the camera because it doesn't work under decent lighting. It only performs well with low lighting,
which is all I have.
So it's great for everybody. But that works great with it. But the life cams don't work because they're not H.264 whatever. So, but Tom is using a high def camera right now.
Yeah,
you're using what is it? Which one is it? The one I sent.
The Free Talk.
Yeah. He's using the Free Talk, which is like a $40 camera.
Yeah, we normally avoid naming names because I do have the whole Microsoft arsenal as well. I have the Cinema, I have the 5001 Microsoft camera. So we've tried many, but currently today I'm using the Free Talk, which does widescreen.
But I'm at the point where I might just get the Cisco telepresence stuff and just send it to 2 people that are on constantly because we're having a lot of issues with Skype right now.
Right.
It's been...
You know, my favorite part of that is you can't have a problem with Skype these days without there being a headline saying, "Is it Microsoft's fault?"
I saw that today. I believe it was Engadget.
Microsoft could possibly have exerted any control, good, bad, or otherwise, over Skype today.
I saw that for the first time, and it was on Engadget, and it said, "Is Microsoft regretting spending all that money on Skype?" And then I'm like, what the hell happened?
It's not like they bought this PlayStation Network. I mean, relax.
Yeah. I went down again.
They had an outage in like the Netherlands for like 20 minutes, and they're making it a big deal. But Paul Thurrott is here from WinSuper site. You could see him every Thursday if the time isn't changed on the Twit Network for Windows Weekly. One of my favorite shows in the entire world.
Thank you.
And I told you when I started doing this, the first thing that I saw, I guess it was ever web show like that was Windows Weekly.
Wow, and still here you are.
And still here I am.
Actually, you probably saw it and said, "Here's something I could do better."
Yeah, and I have not been able to. I have not been able to. So you are still the king. I mean, how many weeks has it been? You guys are like episode what?
200 and I think I would know that.
That's a lot of weeks. After 50 weeks, people just quit here.
Yeah.
We do, though, Paul.
I said this to Leo's assistant or whoever he was years ago. You know, I said I can't guarantee quality, but I can guarantee that I'll show up every week. You know, I mean, I tend to just do things. You know, I start a website or a newsletter or whatever, and it just goes. You know, I don't. Anyone can start these things.
Yeah,
and I think the trick is doing it. You know.
And Tom, what was that you were saying?
Yeah, I was just saying, it's not BS to Paul that Andrew and I'll be talking during the day, Thursday. It's like you're watching Windows Weekly, right? We message each other
Yeah.
just to, it's like,
I-
did you hear that? Did you hear what Paul just said?
I
And,
actually, you know what's
because we
funny?
enjoy you guys banter.
I did a.
No, it's 90% of the reason I still do it. Actually, I really do enjoy the interaction.
I did I don't know. It was kind of like a keynote at Blog World, and I made a comment that upset a lot of people.
Yeah.
It upset a ton of people to the point where some people walked out of my speech, and we were talking about broadcasting online and doing it on your terms and being original. So I was doing this whole thing about the do's and don'ts.
Yeah.
So I brought up, it goes in two extremes. If you're the comedy shock jock type, you copy Howard Stern, and I explained why it doesn't work for most people. And then I brought up Leo Laporte, and I said, well, I've kind of coined this phrase called Leo casting.
That's great.
And I say, it's the Leo Laporte broadcasting kid in the box. And I said, you can't go and copy this man that has been extremely successful at it and then say, well, I'm going to make my own sound and feel.
Sure.
And people got really upset.
Really?
So next time I'm going to bring up Paul casting, Thurrott casting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring that up next time. But
It doesn't fly in certain areas of the country. There's
no.
sort of a subtle deadpan thing that doesn't translate.
Now, Paul, you've done a ton of traveling lately, including back-to-back Vegas.
Yep.
You're international, which I guess was more personal, but you still did broadcasting from there. And but you didn't go to E3.
No, I didn't.
And the only reason I say that, like, accusationally, is because a lot of stuff with Xbox there. Good Microsoft presence, at least yesterday anyway, was pretty dazzling. So that's not something you're interested in at all.
No, I am interested in it. I've had kind of an on again, off again relationship with the video game stuff from a writing or professional standpoint. And when the original Xbox came out in 2001, I mean, I covered it as a news story, but it didn't seem central to what I was doing on the super site for Windows. It was a video game console, and that was it. When the 360 came around, it was very clear that this was going to be a set-top box for the living room and other things, not just video games. So I decided at that point that I would cover the Xbox 360 very centrally to the site. And the thing that's changed in the years since is that I did 3-4 years, whatever it was, of pretty steady video game reviewing with an eye toward I don't want to point out anyone in particular, but I always felt that the video game reporting, the video game press, it's very immature and unprofessional, and the writing is bad, and I wanted to kind of escape from that kind of thing.
The writing is bad in what sense? The writing is bad.
Childish.
Lots of
okay. Silly language, bad language. It's really one or two steps down. I mean, it's bad. It still is. It's got, even good magazines like Maximum PC have a bad habit of letting in a lot of curious language choices and just trying to be a little too hip. Like, I just don't like that kind of stuff.
Is it because they're trying to relate to, I guess,
probably
whoever it is?
When you're in your 40s, you're not going to relate to a 13-year-old that well. So, sorry. But I think the way it's evolved for me is I still review some of the tier 1 titles, especially the shooters, because those are the ones that I play. But I cover Xbox 360 now mostly around the things that are not video game related. So the UI stuff, the multimedia features, all that stuff. So every time there's a dashboard update or whatever, I'll write about that extensively.
And I'll tell you, Paul, I'm not a big video gamer at all. I barely game at all anymore, but I do read that portion of your site when there are UI tweaks, because I use my Xbox as almost a media center. That's exactly what it is. I watch my Netflix and all that stuff on there.
Sure. Even you could extend this to Windows Phone. I mean, I think for this first year, maybe, as Windows Phone catches up and there are games that have been around for a while on the iPhone and they're all being re-released now Windows Phone. I mean, I'll write about that a little bit just because it kind of establishes the platform as a thing, a viable alternative. Mm-hmm. But this is not something I anticipate doing forever. I'll continue. I mean, obviously, I'll continue writing about Windows Phone because I love it. But as far as the game stuff goes, I mean, I think it's a temporary situation. As that thing gets established, you don't really have to draw attention to that stuff anymore because it's just there. And it has everything. So, over time they'll update, the Games Hub and the Xbox Live functionality, all that. So obviously that's something to write about, but it's just not an ongoing concern, I don't think.
Yeah, I want to get back to the Xbox stuff, actually, because there was a lot of development the last couple of days. On Monday, we heard a lot of stuff going on. But it's been a big Microsoft 2 week. I mean, the last month, they purchased Skype. They unveiled Windows 8, which I was surprised at the UI, which we're going to talk about now. And then the Xbox stuff. There's a lot going on, but they're still perceived as this old company. And
I read the stupidest thing I've ever read in my life.
Are you referring to the IBM article?
I'm not gonna. I actually don't remember who wrote it, and maybe as I say it, if you saw it, you might remember it. But someone had written something along the lines of, here we go. Apple is just talking about the future this week. All it is future, future, future. And there's Microsoft talking about this product that's been around for several years, and they're just iterating it, and it's so old-fashioned, and that's so typically Microsoft. And all I could think to myself was, Apple just announced evolutionary updates to the iPhone, which has been around since 2007, and to Mac OS X, which has been around since 2001. And they finally got into cloud computing. And they're the guys who are looking forward to the future. Were you kidding me?
We did WWE. Yeah, we did WWDC coverage, and the entire time, Tom is sending me your tweets.
I know. By the way, I was tweeting like a madman yesterday.
You were.
Awesome.
I was giving Andrew status counts. I'm like, he's at 8, 9, 10, 12.
Yeah. I got shut down. So Twitter, actually, I exceeded my status update limit at some point.
You were spamming.
I couldn't use any.
But no, they were relevant and interesting, Paul. We were covering that event live, and I was also trying to keep up with the E3 with the Xbox stuff, and they were relevant. You weren't just mouthing off, but one of your comments
it was all very targeted. But Apple makes it so easy, and I didn't get to see obviously they didn't have a live feed, so I had the live video of the Xbox thing on one side, and then I had various live blogs on the other, and I kind of cut those down over time as some of them become obviously the good ones to watch. But you go back and you watch this video, which I've already done twice, the WWDC video, and my God, those goons will clap for anything.
Oh my God!
Here's Apple adding notifications to their smartphone platform 5 years after everyone else had it. It's like they invented something.
And now we're gonna have it in the cloud, and then they all stand up and cheer.
No, it was
one of your tweets was, wow, they're doing cloud computing and they're calling it iCloud. Classic tweet.
Well, no, I think it was tweet. Out of all the WWDCs, I think the last couple of years, not all of them, but the last couple of years, this was one of the ones that didn't have that big bang. And I was telling people, and I think a lot of Mac users are kind of spoiled at this right now because every year it's the iPad 3, the iPhone 5, and the iPhone 8, and just going at it.
Yep.
And there comes to a certain point that you can't make everything to a huge presentation. Now, Apple does not understand that, and Apple has one of the greatest PR departments ever because they take numbers. They've lost market share in the cell phone market.
But see that, but they don't,
and they've spun it.
They don't discuss market share then. So Apple is very careful about what they present. They love big numbers. They love to be number one in something, and they will fashion the numbers if they have to make it seem like they're number one at something.
When they showed that pie graph of 40% market share and then Google, and I'm thinking, well, how much of the market share have you lost since 2007?
Exactly. Their usage share has, in fact, gone down over time, of course, because Android is on fire. There were a lot of figures like that. I mean, there was the, we are now up to 54 million active users on the Mac platform. Oh, well, congratulations. That means you're less than 5% of the market from a usage share standpoint. So now what? So you've had all this astronomical growth, which you love talking about every quarter, and what it has netted you at the end of the day is less than 5% of the install base of PCs in the world. So congratulations. I mean, I don't mean to say that it's not a success. The Mac has been very successful for Apple. That's not the point. But they always position everything as if everything was so dominant, and there's even things, and not to get picky about it, but, we have 73% of our computers are portable computers. So we're kind of leading the charge on that one too. Well, the way you lead the charge on that one is you have this low-end desktop computer that has a 2-generation old Core 2 Duo processor, no keyboard, no mouse, no monitor, Oh, and by the way, it starts at $700.
$700, yeah.
So you're not leading any charge. You're basically forcing people to buy laptop computers, because why would anyone buy that when they could get the same computer with a screen and a battery for $200 more?
Well, I saw something. I saw the future here with their with line, and I saw maybe 3 or 4 years into the future when they say they control. It's a numbers game, right? In the end, it's going to be a large. It's all a numbers game. Everybody's into numbers, and everybody's throwing around numbers. Yep. And now with this merger of the modern OS, right, the modern desktop OS, and it's kind of merging with the mobile OS, and you're seeing it on both platforms, both on Microsoft and Apple. I could just see it now when Apple comes out and says we own 70% or 60% of the computing market share. Because now their OS is kind of merged into one OS.
Well,
and
actually, we can calculate exactly what they do on, because one of the figures they supplied was they sold 25 million iPads in 14 months, right? So, doing a little math in our head, we could say 22 million in a year then. PC makers sold almost 400 million PCs last year. What percent of 400 million is 22 million,
Yeah.
And then you could add it to the Macs thing, and you could kind of come up with this number. I mean, no matter how you slice it, it's still a minority portion of the market, running Apple devices. So it's an unfortunate discussion to have. They sort of force you to have it because they're so brazen and so chortling about it. You want to be defensive because of the way they present this information. The truth is, these platforms are decent. They're excellent even. They're mature. The reason that there aren't any huge new announcements this year is because they're in what I saw one place wrote as circle the wagons mode, which makes perfect sense. They're protecting something now.
Sure.
When they didn't have a mobile phone, they could do something like the iPhone. But once you have that product in the market, it's all about iteration.
Yeah.
That's what happens. These things mature.
But a lot of people don't understand that, and I give Apple the credit in the world, and I always say I am an Apple user, I am a Mac user, but I'm also a PC user.
Yep.
I use my PC for real stuff like video and audio and editing, and I use my Mac to go on fun cat pictures. That's pretty much what I.
There was a fun photo that made the rounds via email. It was a picture of 3 nerdy goon guys sitting at their Mac laptops, and it said, Macs are good if you want to update Twitter. And then there was a picture of the White House war room where all the people from the White House were gathered around the computers when they were going after Osama bin Laden. And it said, but Windows PCs are used to capture and kill Osama bin Laden.
Yeah.
And it was like, and that's a sort of an extreme version of, Macs are good at the, the frou-frou stuff or whatever, the creative things and all that.
But the reality
PCs
is,
are done, used for real work.
It's the same thing at this point. There's really not much of a difference between these two operators. I mean, now with the next one, of course.
There's no. I would say today there's very little difference. I mean, you could kind of nitpick here and there. Either one does something in one area that's a little bit better than the other, but pretty much we're looking at the same.
Yeah.
One of my frustrations, rather, is that with anything that Microsoft is doing, and we'll loop back to Windows 8 with the demos. I can't avoid seeing and hearing now they're just copying Mac again, like they did with Vista.
That's unfair. I mean, so there's nothing as beautiful as that start screen on any Mac or Apple UI anywhere. So I don't know what that means. And I guess the other thing I'd point out, and I think this is something you'll both appreciate. I think this is something anyone would appreciate, is if they're following technology, no matter which side of the fence you fall on, is that Microsoft over the past couple of years has come under a lot of fire and by the way, from myself as well. I mean, for not moving decisively into this tablet market as it appeared. Here they are again coming up from behind. And Microsoft's stance early on was, look, when the netbook market happened, we weren't on board for that either. But then we came out with Windows 7 Starter, and we dominated the netbook market. And that's what we think we're going to do again with the tablet market. And of course, everyone sort of said, yeah, that's ridiculous. This is a different kind of market. You don't know what you're talking about. But when you see what they've done, it's funny how everyone is still dumping on Microsoft.
Yeah.
But now they're just doing it for a different reason. So in the past, it was, you guys are moving too slow. You need to do something. You need to act decisively. And then they show up this beautiful UI and people say, oh, no. That's too much. That's not enough like Windows. That's too different.
You know what I think it is, Paul? I think it's the fact that I think both of them, and I saw it this week. Last week, everybody was hating on the new OS, and they were saying, well, this is going to be stupid, and a lot of people are going to like it. And I'm in the middle with this new OS, and you're going to clarify a lot of the stuff. But I saw it on Monday with Apple people turning on their own product because they were upset that there was no huge announcement. And it's interesting. It was a different. It was interesting to see how they were so disappointed at the fact that it wasn't revolutionary. It was evolutionary.
Those people, though, represent such a tiny part now of the audience for Apple's products. And I think this is something that those people are going to be a little uncomfortable with because they're used to being the vocal vanguard of this community or this movement. But as iOS takes off, as Apple sells, I think they said 200 million iOS devices, over the past several years, it's a mainstream device. It's a mainstream product now. So it's not Mac users anymore. It's not that tiny minority of the PC business. These are normal people. When you go out into the world and if you sit on a subway in New York and you look at people on their phones, 3 out of 4 of them or half of them or whatever the number is might be on iPhones. Yeah. They're not tech guys. They're mothers and sisters and kids and, they're just normal people. And this is a different kind of thing. They get caught up in the hype of Apple stuff sort of because it's on the news, but they're not living and breathing the stuff, and they're not, breathlessly anticipating, a developer event at which, Steve Jobs is going to appear. They don't care.
Yeah.
That's not their
That's not their thing, yeah.
Yeah, they want a gadget that has really cool apps and pretty colors and skins and covers and.
But you know what? I bought the. I think. As tech journalists do this and tech enthusiasts do this, we kind of talk about ourselves when we're talking about these products. We rarely think about the average user that really doesn't care about it. And I've over the last 2 years, I've kind of evolved my thinking process. And when I present something on why I like it or don't like it, or why the product is not necessarily why I like it and don't like it, more of why it's a decent product or if it's a bad product, I kind of take myself out of the equation and think about what the mass audience is going to think.
Sure.
And
I use my family as guinea pigs.
Sure. And with the iPad, at first I was saying, well, there were people. I mean, it was craziness, and journalists were saying how this is a laptop replacement. You don't need your laptop anymore. You don't need a desktop anymore. You do everything on this. And I was thinking, well, okay, where's the USB stick? Where's the USB port? Where's the I don't know if they have printer sharing at that point. So, I mean, a lot of things were missing, but when I got the iPad, I bought it for one reason: to have it next to my bed and for me to read my news. That's all I use my iPad for. It's a $500 newspaper for me, and that's all I care. And I play some games. That's about it. Yeah. I don't look at it as
I find myself never playing games.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, he plays real games.
Yeah, see, I'm not. Yeah, but you're a real gamer. I don't have the capacity. The I don't know what it is to sit there and play a game. I could play Street Fighter all day long. I can't.
He does. Okay.
I do.
He does like Gauntlet. Yeah.
I do like
Castle Crashers.
I do like Castle Crashers.
Do you like anything from the century or?
No, I like everything from 2000 and before.
Okay.
But if I'm playing on the iPad, I'll play a little stupid game. Some shooting a bird or. Yeah. You know what I did? I'm so ashamed of this. And you will probably never come back to the show if I tell you this, but I'm going to say it because I want to end my career. On the iPad, on the iOS, there's a thing called Coin Pusher. And all you do, it's that game in the arcade where it pushes coins. And you could get that big lump sum of the coins. I paid $20 to buy extra coins.
Yikes! If you were one of my kids, I would put the restrictions on your iPad.
That's what my wife did. My wife took my iPod Touch away
because she looked not as humiliating as I thought it was going to be. So that's okay.
And then I wore my I Love Steve Jobs T-shirt and hat, and I told people that Max rule and all else rules. So it just caught on. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah. That's very clever and snappy, and that would just put anybody in their pace.
Actually, a viewer said that to us and left the room once, and it's been a catchphrase here at the network.
I get email like that all the time.
Yeah. So let's go back to Windows 8. This is the big thing, and these are a lot of the questions that we're going to be asking you is presented to us by a lot of our viewers that were very confused when this happened.
Sure.
First of all, I personally did not expect
No one did.
This UI for. I thought they were going to go in this direction, but not for this one.
Well, but I mean, I knew that there was a tiles-based UI coming that would be very much like Windows Phone, right?
Okay.
We knew this. But what I assumed, and for logical reasons, was that this thing would only be used on these tablet devices,
Okay.
right? That was the assumption, that if you were running a real PC, you would never see this. It would be like Media Center. It's on there. You have to run it manually, and then you'd look at it and say, well, why would I use this?
So did you think it was going to be preloaded on tablets to sit over Windows 8, or?
I thought that what it was going to do is in the same way that you can go to the system settings and see what multi-touch capabilities your screen has. It will say something like multi-touch capable with 2 points or 4 points or whatever it is. That it would look at your system, and if it found multi-touch with 2 or more contact points, that it would enable this by default, because that would tell it that you're running some kind of a tablet or something that was touch capable.
Okay.
And that would be the point of it. That I also thought, and by the way, this could still happen, actually. I think there's a lot I know there's a lot we don't know, and I think this is going to be part of it, that there is a next generation application package format coming in Windows that is for native code. And they've only talked about HTML and CSS and JavaScript, but I think that there's going to be, this is speculation, but again, based on logic and stuff I do know about the internals of this, that Windows Phone and Windows are coming together at a technological basis, because this new application package in Windows 8 bears a very close resemblance to the application package that's available now on Windows Phone 7.
Is this what they were discussing, how people were freaking out that are they going to still implement EXE, or is there going to be a new format? Is this what this was?
Yeah, so that problem is, I think, part communication issue on Microsoft's behalf and part complete misconstruing of what's going on. There's a new shell in Windows 8, right? This start screen. It does not mean that your EXEs and all the other things that run in Windows today don't run. In fact, it means exactly the opposite. Those things all still are available. It doesn't take anything away. This is completely additive, so it's just something extra. The thing I think they miscommunicated, I hope they miscommunicated, was that they said that the native programming interface for this user experience was based on a web standards, HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. I do believe that it's true that you can create apps that run on the start screen that use those interfaces. I think the reason they said that was, or the reason they only said that was, they wanted to show that this thing would be open to a much wider range of people than would be something based on C# or .NET or Silverlight or whatever, because those things are relatively complex compared to HTML. I do actually believe there's a native interface as well that is programming language agnostic because it's based on .NET and Silverlight. And I don't say that because I just sort of think it's logical. I say that because, Rafael Rivera and I have looked at the internals of some of the Windows 8 builds that we've gotten, and we see things in there. And I just think there's more going on here than we know so far. So I guess that's how I would put it now. I just wish assuming this is the case, because there's always a possibility that either we are misreading this or things have changed or whatever it is. This might not happen. Microsoft has never announced it. I would be very careful when you look at what Microsoft does these days with regards to Windows, because the guy who is in charge, Steven Snofsky, will never show you anything that isn't real running code and isn't real and isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
He's not going to show you the start screen and then pull it back at the last second.
So you're saying it's not going to be like Longhorn?
It won't be bait and switch.
Exactly the opposite of that.
Yeah, because
I think that I think the reason they only said HTML is because that is a definite. It's happening.
Yeah.
I think the reason they didn't say anything else is because they don't want to set expectations and then disappoint people.
Yeah, I think go ahead, Tom.
I was gonna say they flat out repeatedly mentioned HTML5, Java, and CSS as being integral because it's well known, it's established, and it's easy for anybody to pick up, like you said. And some of the other ones require a little bit more programming. And in my opinion, I state this constantly on the shows, Microsoft is overly generous with training and getting up to speed, like they did with Zune / Windows Phone 7 programming. They give you the tools, kits, training to do it. But HTML and all these are already out there. People are doing it every day, all day, anyway. So they've already just told everybody, this is going to be an easy transition.
Yep.
You won't have to learn anything amazing and new. We're not going to make you suffer for it or buy stuff to learn to develop. I thought that was very friendly as a developer to have, to be assured that, oh, well, you know what, I can develop something for this, even though, it doesn't exist quite yet. For a developer, I think that's it's a good.
Right. If you can make a
effect.
full screen web page,
Yeah.
you're 90% of the way to making an app. This thing apparently.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, the wording that they use, you're absolutely right. They were very careful on saying just enough, but not saying a lot. It's still very early. When do you expect there to be a beta release? Probably November, right?
So in September, Microsoft is going to have its build conference, and my expectation is that we will get a beta, maybe a private beta version then. That's the next milestone. I would imagine if they don't release it publicly then, which they could, but if they don't, that the public beta, following sort of along the lines of the Windows 7 schedule, would happen before the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And that would mean a release candidate in the very early part of 2012, and then a final release by this time next year.
Okay. I mean, it's pretty soon.
Yeah.
I mean, it's they have to be far along in the development of the OS to kind of be presenting this. I mean, this isn't, again, to reiterate, because a lot of the emails that I got were saying, well, is this the idea? Is this things that they are hoping? Is this like
no,
wishing on a star?
Yeah, what was their file management that they never implemented?
WinFS.
Is this going to be WinFS?
No. If he showed it, this is it. And we need to be very clear about that. The other thing I just thought of, in keeping with what we just talked about with Apple and the expectations with the audience and everything, remember that people who know anything about Silverlight development or C# or whatever is a kind of a small crowd, relatively speaking, compared to the wider user base of computers, right? 1 to 1.2 billion people worldwide use computers. If they were to say things like, we're going to support C# and Silverlight and yada, 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 there would be this tiny portion of people who would be very excited by that, but there would be this huge portion of people who would have no idea what that means, and they would glaze over and they would stop paying attention. By really hammering home HTML, web standards, HTML, Microsoft is sending a message to the real world that they will understand, because I think the real world has this conception that cloud computing is this thing, computing is heading to the web, and now they hear that Microsoft's next operating system is compatible with the web, and they say, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that really is the point, behind the messaging, even though I do think that they could have done a better job of communicating, even vaguely, that there will be some native programming, if there will be, and I think there will be, in their printed documentation or something. I still do believe they should have done a better job at that. But when you think about, look, this is a very calculated thing. They literally had 3 different outlets for this information: the live appearance by Steven Sinofsky, the recorded video by Jensen Harris, and then a separate live appearance by Mike Angiulo in Computext. And all of these things repeated the exact same things over and over again. It was very precise, So I would pay attention to that aspect of it too, I guess.
Where do you think this leaves the Windows user? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think people are going to embrace this new OS? What do you think the majority is going to do? Because already people are, and I'll tell you, I'm one of those people that's kind of in the middle. I was screaming that Microsoft needs to do something like this to kind of slowly phase out their legacy, right? Because we've had this OS for 20 years. It's evolved into what it is, but it's pretty much the same exact thing. And somebody needs to take the next leap, and we saw that with OS X, with the transition, and Apple was able to do it. And a lot of people say, well, Apple did it. Well, Apple did it with what, 4% of the market at that point? They a very tiny percentage. So when they said, screw you, we can't, you're not going to, it's not supported anymore, it didn't affect millions and millions and millions and millions of people like it would do for Microsoft.
Right.
Where does this leave the enterprise user? Where does this leave the the average Joe that goes on to check his emails? What's going to happen once this is released? People buy a new computer with this, or people install this in their computer and they go, "Oh my God, what is this?"
I think this is a huge win for anyone who uses computers. I think people underestimate the size of the audience out there of people who want to stick with Windows for all the compatibility, all the good reasons, but want something, tablet and iPad-y and apps and all that stuff. They want that, but they don't want to break, you know. And Microsoft's biggest strength, also maybe its biggest weakness, is that backwards compatibility necessity. That they have the hugest possible market and also the most diverse possible market, right? They've got home users and students and other individuals. They've got business users that are tightly controlled and not tightly controlled.
I'm running a TV, a television network practically in my office.
Yep.
So, where does this lead?
How do you please all these people? It's always been a truth that Windows has been kind of a compromise because you can never finely tune something. Not to get off on a Mac thing too long, but I've always said, and I see it again, and I'll say it again with Lion, that Mac OS X is a great OS, but it is very much for power users. It's not that super simple thing my kid's sister could use. It's really a power user thing, and the reason it is a power user thing is because all of its best features are not easily discoverable. You have to know the secret.
Yeah.
You have to have investigated that this gesture now will do something, or that that these things are hidden in there.
I always say that the Mac OS has done a great job at hiding the innards.
Yeah,
and the function. So if you're looking, like there's no really, there's technically, I know there is a control panel, but there's no start click control panel. It's not self-explanatory where you could find. How are you going to get to administrative settings if this is the first time you've done this?
Yeah,
it's difficult. You need to know it. You need to know where to go.
And to the people who use it and love it and advocate its use, they always say, Paul, you don't know what you're talking about. This thing's really easy to use. Look, this is all you have to do this, and this is all you have to do this. And it's like, yeah, of course, but you know how to use it. Anything you already know how to use is easy. That doesn't mean it's easy to use. It means it's easy for you because you have experience with it. There's a big difference. So Windows, because it kind of hits a much more general market, a broader market, they have to dumb it down a little bit. They have to have more obvious UIs and so forth. It's not always successful, don't get me wrong, but it really does serve a different set of markets that it's not a highly tuned thing for one particular market, which is what I think OS X really is. Mm-hmm. I look at this UI, and by the way, I want to be very clear, in a Monday morning quarterback kind of way, because the thing I've been complaining about and asking for is like, look, break with the past, forget it. Use Windows Phone on these tablets. It will be beautiful, smart. And Microsoft's approach is like, look, we can't leave behind everybody. And perhaps in a more genius sense, we can make one UI that actually works across all these devices. And what they've done is they've created this UI that works on phones, works on these little slate tablets and notebooks and netbooks and ultrabooks and all the other portable computers. It works with desktop computers. It will work great. Can you imagine a server UI like this? So you log in as an admin, and instead of like the weather and all that, you have like server status and health and the performance monitor and what PCs need to be updated with software updates. I mean, it would be
fantastic,
a beautiful UI for that.
You're absolutely right in that sense. I never thought of that, actually. That's the first time, and that would work unbelievably well.
If you want to lock down a corporate desktop because you only want that guy to run 4 different apps, you put those 4 tiles on, you lock the rest of it, you're done. It's perfect for that. It becomes this dashboard.
That is, right? I mean, that is a perfect example because as a NA, a network administrator, when you go into it, it's a lot of, well, I won't even bring up Active Directory, but if you want to go in and establish those controls over users, there's a lot of clicking and right clicking, but if you could have it as a map, which is what a network is, it's just a map of links, and if you have it tiled out and
I just picture server monitors and performance monitors and all those little geeky controls, but in a laid out in a beautiful fashion. Smart.
What I want to ask you?
Pull it up and see where the resources are coming out of purchasing, or if it's coming out of marketing. To be able to see traffic and where cycles are being used and strains to be able to
Yes. I mean, Microsoft, a lot of the server products use that notion of server health or environment health, where green means good and yellow is okay and red is terrible.
It's very vague.
They could color the background, those colors, and you log in the morning and something's wrong. I mean, this thing works obviously in the living room. They put it in the Xbox interface. You could so put it in a media center PC or a media.
And they've had a couple of years to test it out. I mean, they've had the Xbox to kind of play around with the idea to see, how well it works and are people accepting it. You know what I want to ask you?
Yep.
And Suncast in our chat room brought it up. I just recently built a new i7 machine because we're having some major driver issues with one of our capture cards from Blackmagic. So we had to go over to a new motherboard, and we decided we're going to go with and do a total upgrade, and we got the new i7 2600K.
Yep.
The motherboard that I got has an EFI BIOS.
Right.
I had never seen it before, and I'm used
They're
to
on Macs. So that, by the way, that's what you have on a Mac.
Yeah, but I've never accessed it, to be honest, on a Mac.
Okay, but I mean, they're not without precedent, is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
They exist on x64 machines.
Yeah, but this is the first time that I've actually explored it and saw it. What do you think of them? Do you think this is everybody's going to evolve into this? Because it was very.
Yeah.
It took me back when I looked. I'm like, wait a minute. There's a mouse. You could use a mouse with this. You could.
Yeah, I mean, one guy who wrote me said, you said that Windows 8 would run on 32 and 64-bit machines, but actually, there's a new form of EFI called UEFI.
UEFI, yeah.
That is only 64-bit. So obviously, what you said is wrong. And
You liar.
First of all, the 32-bit thing came from Microsoft, not from me. UEFI is only required on the ARM chipset. The point is that Windows 8, again, fully in the backwards compatibility mode from a hardware standpoint this time, obviously supports a legacy BIOS if that's what you have. It supports EFI if that's what you have on a Mac or I guess on a PC now. Or it will support this new UEFI. And yeah, I do think that this is the future. And, because when you install Windows, and this is probably true on the Mac as well, although they control it better on the Mac, there are different stages in the setup process where your system is examined and the database of drivers is consulted, and if they have it, they install those drivers. If they don't, they try to get online and so forth. There's a tricky thing in Windows with regards to certain low-level interactions between the hard drive and the hard drive controller and the motherboard or whatever it is, where that information is what's supplied by the BIOS or in this case by EFI. I went through a process with a MacBook Air where Apple, by virtue of its I think purposely, configures the it's not a hard drive, but the hard disk controller to interact in a legacy format, not in a newer, more modern format, which compromises the performance of Windows running on a Mac.
Yeah. But there's some issues with third-party drives, right? When you put them in, it doesn't work properly.
It's new. It's still kind of new, right? It's still kind of an unknown thing. But the goal behind EFI or UEFI should always be the same thing, which is to provide a more accurate map of what's going on in the hardware so that when you install Windows, it's optimized out of the box. Because there are certain low-level optimizations that occur when you install Windows that you literally cannot fix later.
Yeah.
And you want that stuff to be as accurate as possible the first time. And obviously, these things provide other benefits over BIOS is an ancient standard, right? I mean, this is like the old bootstrap thing from the 1970s. I mean, BIOS is old.
Well, what do they say now? With a if your motherboard has EFI, Windows 8 could theoretically boot in about 6 or 8 seconds.
Yeah, but I have an SSD in one of my computers. It already boots in like 10 or 12 seconds. I mean, that's not that incredible.
Yeah,
or I should say, it's not so unbelievable given what we're already seeing on SSD based, just normal computers today. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time that I've it's a modern motherboard and say higher end motherboard, and I got it, and I was a little taken back, and I said, "Ooh, okay, I need to think about this." And it was weird because it's the first time especially in my lifetime as a computer user, that I've actually had a huge change like this. A lot of older computer users have seen it.
I've not seen that on a PC personally.
Yeah, it was the first time, and I'm looking, I'm like, "Ooh, okay." I played around with it for a little bit, and it was interesting. It wasn't that I hated it or there's nothing to hate. It's great. A lot of information is there. It gives you all the stats. But it was really different, and it really showed where, the modern BIOS is going.
Anyone who's spent any amount of time with computers, especially people like us who have built their own computers or, custom installed Windows multiple times on computers and so forth, you mess around in the BIOS. Windows Vista comes along, and there's this TPM thing or a BitLocker thing, and you think, well, if your CPU supports this or if you have this in your BIOS, and you go and you look for it, because that's what you're a geek. You want to see if you have this thing in your computer. Yeah. You get to know how to get into it, right? Because it's a little different on every computer, unfortunately. And then you get to understand the keyboard navigation that you do, and then the keys that you can press to save and exit or exit without saving and all the different things you can do. And this is, the BIOS has been around forever, so you get really used to this kind of thing. if someone were to look at that EFI interface that you were looking at and think, oh no, I can't handle this. This is too nice.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, this is the same reaction that people are having to that Windows 8 start screen, where it's like, nope. It's like, no, you can't get rid of DOS. This is too different from what I'm used to.
Yeah.
I had an analogy to this when Andrew, we were discussing this when I was up there recently for Blog World, and he was describing this BIOS experience.
I'm sure at one point
revelation.
I said a few curse words and I hated it for about 30 seconds.
But that was when you were swerving through traffic.
Yeah.
But my analogy to it was AS400. I AS400 certified and learned it, but it was all command line. So I had to type out every command like DOS. Then I go to work in a large place like IBM. They're like, well, you're AS400 certified. Here you go. And I sit down and it's all GUI. And I'm like, what? You can use a mouse? And like, well, why wouldn't you? And so I'm like, I'm sweating. I'm like, of course I knew you could use the mouse on this. So yeah, it was. I'd been trained on COBOL and AS400 completely RPG command line, and then all of a sudden I find out that there's a new version that wasn't really new that I could just click and do amazing things with. So when he was telling me about the new BIOS, I was having my AS400 flashbacks. But is that going to be the future of everything with
Well, of course. I mean, Microsoft came out with Server Core, and suddenly here we have a version of the server that is only command line, essentially. And you realize you forgot everything. You used to have all this DOS stuff in your head, and you could do things that required complex parameter passing and so forth. And now confronted with this is the UI, you need a book because you can't remember any of it. Yeah, I mean, obviously this stuff. I mean, it has to get better at some point. I mean, I think the nice thing that Microsoft can do with the UIs, at least, is they don't drop the old stuff. Sometimes ever. You can still go back to a classic UI that dates back sort of to Windows 95, right? In Windows 7.
Sure.
They only very slowly get rid of stuff. I think Windows 7 was the first one not to have the classic start menu, for example. So
I still use the classic start menu. I turned it on.
Yeah, that's another thing we discussed. Yeah, first thing I do when I Vista or 7 classic mode, and I did it last night at a client's house.
Yeah.
In the control panel, switch to classic view. I think people get stuck in their ways. I mean, we all do this. I just bought a laptop, and I go through this kind of rigmarole every time I install Windows. You do certain things, and you do them in a certain order.
And half of them, they're not even necessary anymore.
No,
right?
no, of course not. They just make you feel like it's okay. I don't know who can explain it.
Make me feel good.
I always call Tom. I'm like, should I install the drivers first or do the updates first? What do you think?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
every time I ask him, it's a different answer. Sometimes it's install the BIOS. Sometimes it's install the drivers. Sometimes install the software. It doesn't even matter anymore.
No, Paul. My answer is usually, why don't you ghost the thing when you get it the way you want it?
I refuse
and then
to.
you can just set it.
why?
So actually, I do think that normal people. Well, it's because no one normal would ever ghost anything, but I would do that if I could. The problem is I test so much stuff.
Yeah.
If I went back to an image of my computer from 2 months ago or something, it wouldn't be worthless. I mean, don't get me wrong, but there's too many new versions of things even since then.
Yeah, he has a lot of conflicts with the video capture cards and so forth.
The big problem that we have, and the reason why I ended up going to the i7 is because the capture card that I have, Blackmagic Designs, which makes phenomenal hardware, this capture card hates my motherboard. And I think it's the Asus Crosshair 4. It was an AMD. I was only on AMD for a while. You know what was the last Intel I had? I had an Intel Pentium 2.
Oh, geez.
And then I went to all AMD the entire time, and this is the first Intel I've gotten since a Pentium 2.
Well, welcome back.
Yeah, and before that I had a 200 megahertz MMX IBM.
Nice.
It was the S series. It was I was so happy when I got that thing. So I got the AMD motherboard, for whatever reason, the firmware the capture card requires a firmware update. And depending on what mood it's in, it'll get the firmware upgrade. If it doesn't get that firmware upgrade, you're done. Windows crashes, blue screens constantly. I think I'm single-handedly the only person that has seen over 100 blue screens on a 7 machine.
That's 7 by. And do you have to be in Windows to get this firmware update?
You have to be in Windows, and and I figured, I'm like, well, what if I take it to another machine so I built a dummy computer with a cheap motherboard. I installed it. The firmware got in perfectly well. 1, 2, 3, it installed. I take it, I put in the other motherboard, needs it again. So it's some weird thing. It doesn't even need the firmware. It just needs to go through that process. It was to the point where it fried the card twice. I have about 8 cards here. It fried 2 of them, and the motherboard refused to do anything more. So I said, hell with it. I went to Micro Center and just built out a new machine. And it worked great, by the way. I got the new machine, and it worked wonderful.
I can see why you use Macs. But
yeah,
I mean, that's kind of tough, yeah.
So I gave up on that, and then I just built the i7, and it's a phenomenal machine. And but my question was, a lot of people don't have the luxury of having an i7 2600 i7, and the thing is phenomenal. I mean, right now I have 5 videos up on the screen with you being screen captured on Skype, and I'm at 28% system resources.
Actually, aside from my laptop, the most powerful computer I have is a Core 2 something. I have a Core 2 quad desktop. My stuff is all a couple of generations old, although I did just get a laptop with a.
But so my question is, this UI, it's a nice looking UI. How much system resources is this going to take, opposed to the standard, Windows 7 type UI that we're used to?
It's going to take less. I mean, there are specific requirements around Aero for hardware acceleration, and PCs just come with that stuff. It's no big deal. Integrated graphics chipsets can handle it, no problem. The Windows 8 start screen is flat. I'm sure it will do hardware acceleration if you have it, but I'm sure it will work fine with that. It's a web page, basically. Mm-hmm. And I think, well, I know. I mean, the hardware requirements across the board for Windows 8 are going to be the same or less than the equivalent hardware requirements and recommendations for Windows 7.
Okay.
So that's a fact. I mean, so no worries there. You don't have to have some crazy next generation computer.
Well, technically, it's going to be I assume it's going to be less, considering it's going to run on the tablets.
Right.
Well, I guess technology changes over the last couple of years, so it'll be exactly where it was. Yeah, I mean, Tom is very anti-tablet. Now, are you interested in a tablet now?
No. Me or Tom?
Tom, because he hates the fact that I have an iPad.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, I don't sleep. I don't sleep any at all. No,
I won't.
Actually, I'm really close to probably getting a Nook. I've actually considered contacting you, Paul, about this because I know you're a fan of the Kindle. A client of mine recently got the Nook Color, and I helped her configure it, and I was really enjoyed the way it worked. But I don't have a basis for comparison as far as I didn't have a Kindle in my hand to test it side by side. And maybe it was just the color thing and some of the abilities that it entailed. But that's as close to it as I need. Otherwise, and I think you alluded to this earlier, I'm perfectly content lugging my gigantic, huge, heavy little laptop around. I don't know when that became such a burden. I mean, I have a 386 AT&T laptop in here if you want to carry around a brick. But
right, that gets 20 minutes of battery life.
Yeah, it was a gift from IBM. I haven't reached that level yet that I just need something that's so darn light and sleek that doesn't do anything. I haven't reached that plateau yet, but I wouldn't mind a good reader that does a little bit more than the Kindle.
I've said it 1,000 times. I have it next to my bed, and I hate bringing my laptop up.
Well, you've also said that it's like a $500 book reader.
Serves a purpose. Yeah. I mean, even for me.
Yeah. Now, you do have an iPad, right, Paul?
Right. I'm sorry.
You have an iPad?
Yeah, I still use an iPad, the first iPad. I bought an iPad 2. I reviewed it, and then I sold it to a friend.
And you still like your Kindle, though?
I do have a Kindle and love and recommend Kindle. That's a kind of a different conversation in a way. I would say that right now, I understand why you would like a Nook Color. There's an Android thing going on there, which I think is interesting. Mm-hmm. I know that Amazon's working on a tablet, and we'll certainly probably see that this year. So, we'll see how that goes. But if there was a better way to present the New York Times on the iPad than there is today, I would use that to read the paper probably. I could see reading books on it, even though it's not necessarily ideal, especially when you're outside or whatever. I use it to watch movies. I like things that you can stick in a computer bag and travel with and not really feel that they're there. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about the Kindle. It's probably true of the Nook as well.
Absolutely, and the battery life and all that, and the Nook seemed good. I don't for one second compare an iPad to a Nook or a Kindle. I am aware that
it's
there's a
definitely
difference.
the next size up. Yeah.
But I want to read and the whole thousands of free books, classics available, and I'm more into reading it like that. But I don't need all that iPad or any of the playbook functionality yet. I would say, but I do want to get into, because behind me, screen left, is an Xbox. I have a couple of those in my house. Did you monitor the announcements from yesterday's E3 with Kinect and all the exciting voice Bing and all that going on? And what do you think of it? Is any you did? I did write down literally while we were covering WDC, while Steve Jobs was dazzling us. I wrote down Avatarded.
another classic tweet.
Yeah.
They
one
made
of your
the
tweets.
avatars even more avatarded.
Yeah, so
one of the greatest things
not
I've
a
ever
fan of
heard.
the avatars. In fact, that's a good example of something I wish you could just turn off.
You know what? I am buying that domain right now.
Avatarded.
Yeah, like Twit, we have Hover as a sponsor, and I'm buying the domain avatarded.com.
Yeah.
So I have the same ongoing thing with the Kinect, which is I recognize that there's something there, some kernel of the future of computer interfaces, that there'll be this Minority Report thing where we're moving our arms around.
Right.
I have used the Kinect, however, so that I also know that it's not there today, that this thing is avatarded in some ways. It doesn't always work very well. But the interesting thing about Kinect, so, they show all these games, and God help them, they show like hardcore games like the Tom Clancy Ghost Recon game and Star Wars, where and they have to ruin it by like putting Kinect stuff into it. The one thing that is in Kinect that I don't think it's enough press today that absolutely works and is great is voice control. And it sounds silly maybe, but yes, sitting in front of a TV and providing voice commands actually makes a lot of sense. I mean, what could be lazier than picking up a remote?
I agree completely, Paul. And I said this yesterday. I was the thorn in the side. We were covering very well the WWDC, but I was also trying to monitor the other. But they did. For anybody who doesn't know, they did a demo with the woman in the chair, and she would say, Bing, or Xbox Bing, and would she say something like, find X-Men,
some kind of movie or
Yeah, and it pulled up everything X-Men, from X-Men games, X-Men cartoons, everything that Xbox can access related to X-Men. And I thought, like you, that the voice is far more appealing than waving, because and you have it as well, sat in front of that thing, and you have to activate the wave.
But you know what, Tom? I'm gonna
you sit there like an idiot, right? You're like,
you wave to try to get it to recognize your wave.
And then you finally say screw it and you grab the controller.
But
and it's just,
then you click. Yeah.
But don't you guys think that this is where it's going, especially with the tiled platform for Windows 8? We're not going to go. I don't think touchscreen is the future of computing. Some people may claim that the mouse is dead.
Actually, there's no black and white to this. There is lots of different stuff. Remember when tablet PC came out, they made the stylus they called it a first class way to enter data. That this handwriting information that you put into these programs was stored on the hard disk, just like as if it were text from Word or from a notepad program or whatever. That it was a first class data type, I think was the way they described it. Windows is not. We're not dropping the mouse on the keyboard. We're adding stuff. So over time you pick up the pen and the stylus stuff with handwriting recognition. You pick up touch and then multi-touch. You pick up remote control, right, with Media Center, and now with the Xbox. You can use a hand controller if you want, but you can also just use a normal Media Center remote control. It works fine. You can use the Kinect style thing where you wave. You can use your voice. You can, you have all these things. None of them replace anything else. They're just valid in different conditions. So in your living room, maybe gesturing might make sense. Speaking, I think, makes a lot more sense. touchscreen makes no sense. You're not going to walk up to your HD
No.
TV and touch the TV. That's what we used to do before we had remotes. We would turn the channel. That nobody does that in a living room, but you would do that with a tablet or possibly with your screen, you know, in an office or whatever. So I think the beauty here is, and I think people forget this or don't understand it, you know, with the start screen in Windows 8, which is it's not just for touch. It works with everything. Everything I just described, all that stuff works.
Yeah,
You know, it's not for one.
really
It's not
friendly,
we're replacing the mouse.
smooth.
I think
Interface.
we're a society of people that's one or the other, right? You can't possibly support everything.
I know,
Why
sorry.
would you want to
Sorry
support
to
everyone?
disappoint you, but
Yeah. It's all Microsoft's fault, according to Twitter, of course. No,
But I did.
Go ahead, Tom.
No, I was gonna say I did see some really neat stuff with the upcoming Xbox dashboard, which they've been testing with select people. Andrew has been testing the upcoming dashboard.
I cannot say if I have been testing.
okay.
Allegedly,
Yeah,
been just invited to test it, but I did see some really interesting. I am not, as you alluded to, at all interested in Ghost Recon. I don't want to play Black Ops on waving my fingers. I don't want to pretend I'm holding a gun in my hand and go choo 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 at the screen. You know, I thought that
was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. That's actually one example where having a fake plastic gun would actually make more sense.
Yeah.
Than holding your hands in the air as if you were holding a gun.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, that's where in the Sony controller, where I just think is ridiculous, that little chopped off lightsaber ball thingy. I think the Xbox, if you're going to do that, if you're going to go wireless, controllerless, then Xbox did it right. I think Kinect works really, really well for what it is, but I don't want it, my action games bastardized into that any more than I enjoyed playing Resident Evil on my Nintendo DS.
Yeah.
That was a miserable experience when I was reviewing that. I think there's some really good things coming up for Kinect, but again, going back to the voice command, why even expel the energy to pick up the remote when you can say, you know, Xbox, YouTube. Do you know much about the YouTube? Because that's part of when they started talking about that, I had to join our GFQ broadcast. Xbox is going to start streaming or enabling YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does that mean?
Is that correct and accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I just know what they showed. I don't have any other information about it. But yeah, I mean, you know, today you gain access to different services like Netflix, which actually you have to pay for, or Hulu Plus or whatever. So YouTube will become one of the video sources that's available. I think that the point of it, aside from saying it was available, was that when you do that search that you were talking about, the Bing search, that's one of the places that will be searched. So if you were to do the X-Men search that you mentioned, you know, YouTube results would be in there as well. So that could include things like movie trailers and maybe clips of the movies that people have uploaded and so forth. So
now, how about the TV service? We've seen this implemented in Xbox in the UK with Sky, and a few other countries, but now we're getting it here in the States with AT&T Uverse.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the vaguest thing I've ever seen.
Very vague.
In fact, they announced it, and I said, "Well, okay, we heard rumors that this was coming. This will be interesting." And then they moved on to the next topic, and I asked Mary Jo Foley, I said, "Did I miss something? They didn't announce anything." Did
Well,
they?
Yeah, we're
think
gonna
it's
have
because-
TV next topic.
And we've been
We're
screaming
gonna
about
have
this for
live
a
TV.
while.
And then they moved on. Yeah.
Tom and I have always screamed about this. We're saying, well, you know, the set-top box that the cable company provides you is such an archaic thing, right? It's extremely slow. It's sluggish. I have FiOS here, and I had Time Warner before that. And one is worse than the other
FiOS
one.
set-top box is among the absolute worst.
Oh,
I mean,
it's atrocious, and they've been trying to, and I don't understand how difficult it would be for them to do this. And I don't understand. I know the cable company wants to control everything, but they're implementing Twitter, they're implementing Facebook and YouTube, and even Blip.
I can't stand that stuff. I would give
so
anything
bad.
for that cable to plug right into my Xbox and have that be the controller. I hate that.
But
box.
why not, Paul? Why can't we do this?
Well, unfortunately, in the case of the cable companies, I can't say FiOS explicitly, but you know, Microsoft, when the time came and they had the software and the stuff, they went to these companies, but it was during the antitrust stuff right at the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And those companies were scared to death of Microsoft. So I think the time kind of came and went. I mean, hopefully that is something that can happen.
Didn't Microsoft make a set-top box? Not a set-top box, but they made the software for one. It was
Media Room. And they also make they make the AT&T Uverse stuff. They had Ultimate TV. They had Web TV before that. I mean, they actually have a kind of a rich history in this market. It's just that in the U.S. at least, I guess some of the Microsoft set-top box software is actually deployed pretty broadly in different international markets, but in the U.S., it's still very, very limited. You know, I don't have access to anything like that here. I would love to. I mean, you've seen Media Center. You know how beautiful this stuff can be.
Yeah,
Media Room is very much like that.
You know, we've joked about Google TV a couple times on the show, and my wife absolutely loves it. And
does she want one? Because I can.
And you gave me the same offer, and I went upstairs. I'm like, Paul thinks you're an idiot for liking Google TV to the point where he's willing to give
hold on a second.
I said that to her. I said, Paul Thurrott thinks you're stupid for liking Google TV, and then I laughed and.
Yikes!
And she made a joke.
Divorce is pending.
About divorce. So, but she loves it, and I couldn't figure it out. And the more I use it, the more I realize it's one of the only devices like this that really integrate the television and the separate unit, right? We're so used to going from input 1 to input 2, but with the Google TV, it integrates everything into one thing, so you're not changing inputs. It's right there, and it's kind of part of your cable box.
So before Microsoft announced the Xbox UI stuff, which I didn't see coming, but again, in a Monday morning quarterback kind of way, you see it after the fact and you realize, okay, this makes a lot of sense. I was thinking that this Windows UI, the start screen, would make a lot of sense on TVs, and that the way Microsoft could do this would be to put it on an ARM chipset and build it into TV sets. That, Samsung and Sony and whoever could do this. And I still see no reason that can't happen. I mean, these chipsets are powerful enough to drive a full media center interface and all that stuff. It'd be beautiful. You don't even need a set-top box. It could just be in the TV. I still think that could happen. I mean, I don't know anything about it. I don't know if there are any plans for that, but that's one of those things. You remember, when you think about this UI and you think about the system requirements, you think about the chipsets that it's going to run on, it's not hard to imagine something that literally is the size of an SD card that's an entire Windows 7 embedded system. That would fit in anything.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think the problem is that a lot of these cable companies, not the cable company, but the set-top box companies and the TV companies think that, well, we could do this.
Except they can't.
Except that they can't. I mean, and it's been
Motorola, who makes the box that we both hate. I mean, think about look at that piece of East German engineering.
Yeah.
And think about how beautiful it could be. And then think about what happened to Motorola, although actually they bounced back somewhat. But, they were stuck there for 3-4 years where they had these antiquated phones, and then they got out-innovated by all these different companies. Not just Apple, but, HTC and Samsung and everyone else.
Paul, are you saying that the Razor was outdated?
Yeah, I think the second it was announced. Yeah. But yes. I mean, and clearly that needs to happen to them in this market. But they have some weird monopoly with cable companies. That's all you ever see. I mean, there's basically 2 companies that make these set-top boxes. I think it's like Scientific American and those guys.
Yes, I think there's another one. Hang on, who was? I think they're using Samsung now.
Please be Raytheon. It's like some company from the 60s. You're like, who are
I
these
think
people?
Samsung makes some of them now.
Oh, do they?
I think Samsung is making them for Time Warner here. Quasar, yeah. RCA.
I just say you have files, so you know this. I was just talking to my wife about this. We pay them a lot of money. It's fiber optic. It's beautiful. The internet's fast. The picture's not compressed in any way. It's incredible. But the kind of trade-off is they have this ancient East German looking set-top box and the crappiest router on the internet.
Oh yeah, the Action Tech
piece of crap.
I'm going to show you something, Paul. I'm going to show you something, and it's going to blow your mind. Okay.
Okay.
He's gone to bed.
I heard the sound of something being ripped off the wall, I think.
Yeah, I know. He was taking off the head, so he's gonna go get a visual aid for this particular event. Are you still doing Black Ops much while we're on semi-related?
Yeah, I have a sad
if you could
addiction,
see the video,
unfortunately.
what do you see here?
Nice. So I actually have 2 of those like that.
Okay, I have
things go down.
3 connected right now. I have 3 in the house that are working.
You complain and they'll just send you another one.
Yeah, no. Well, I've bought them.
You bought them?
I bought them. We had a big problem with they were burning out because we have one line that's 50 by 50 files, and then the other line is I think it's 20 by 5, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I have those 2 running in the studio. Let me insane, this setup. Okay, so
Uh,
there we go.
just wants to show you how foolish he's been.
Okay, so I have 2 in that corner.
Oh yeah.
And then I have another one upstairs. So we have 3 working. And then I have 3 here as backup because they died. They decide they're going to stop working.
Yeah.
Then in my attic, I have another 2. So I have 5 as backup because they go out constantly.
Oh, I know. I have 2 in the closet. I one of which is literally just sitting there waiting for this thing to die.
It's the biggest
Like
piece of
big
junk.
razors.
I've never. It is
I hate it. I
the
hate it.
biggest
I mean,
piece of junk ever. The
So
router.
there are instructions online for how to replace this thing. You still have to kind of use it in an auxiliary mode if you want to use that coax stuff. It's for on demand. If you don't have no use of that, by the way, you could just replace it with any router apparently.
Yeah.
So I've not done
I'm
this.
sorry. I've used the same receiver for my satellite for 10 years. Sorry, I can't. I have nothing to complain about.
No, this is the biggest piece of junk. They know it too. They know it too, and they have another one. It's a Westel, which they tried to implement here on Long Island, and that failed as well because I don't know why. Westels, I've always had a problem with them, and now they have a third one, which is their business one.
Yeah. Is it huge?
It's humongous. It's like
Because my friend
it's
got
literally
BIOS,
the
and he
size
asked
of
me to look at his router.
It's this big.
He's got this thing. It's like 3 feet tall. And I walked in his office and I was like, where is it? And he's like, it's down there in the corner. And I'm like, nope, where is it? He's like, yeah, it's that thing. I'm like, no, that's a tower computer. He's like, no, that's my router.
Yeah, the thing is huge.
Yeah.
It's such a piece of junk, and I really don't understand why they're using these devices. I mean, I guess you're stuck with them. But now, to top it all off, I have no cell phone coverage in this house. It is a death spot. It's a 113-year-old colonial house,
Sure.
and these walls are made with
asbestos
and lead, pretty much.
You probably have like all these
Like
radio
the
waves going
paint.
through the air. You might want to get checked up.
No, nothing works here. So I
That
called them.
explains a lot.
It does, right? I think it does. This whole thing is just poison. I called them up and I told them this, and they've come out 10 times to try to see what could happen, and nothing works. And this happened overnight. I woke up one morning and there was no more cell service, and they're trying to sell me another piece of junk hardware for $250 to give me
wireless
voice
extender things.
Yeah, and it's not 3G. It's just the voice.
Nice.
So I'm fed up at this point. But before me and Paul go on our hate spiel like we do every.
for joining us,
seriously,
Paul.
but you put up with it because the connection is so beautiful.
The connection
when
is
this thing
beautiful.
works,
Yeah.
When it's on, it's on.
Yeah, I mean the
it's
connection.
on. It's a full flood pipe. It's beautiful.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you know, you want to hear about conspiracy theories? I'm gonna pull the Dvorak here. I have this theory where they don't throttle bandwidth and they don't cap bandwidth.
Yep.
But I honestly think that they have a red flag. And we're sending out 2 megabits on the main line. We're sending out 2 megabits a second.
Yep.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Every 2 months at the exact time, same time, the line goes dead.
It just resets or something.
It starts blinking yellow, whatever it is. I call them up, and they make me go this whole thing, and I already know that the ONT can no longer communicate with the actual device, with the router. So they have to reset the entire thing. I think it's a like a switch where they're saying, like, wait a minute, get this guy on the phone, something weird is going on.
They just have a kitchen timer, and once it bings, everything shuts down.
Exactly. So that's
Yeah.
my theory on what Time Warner is doing.
Could be right.
I could be right. So I know we're getting off.
Tinfoil hat is in the mail.
Yeah, I know. We're getting off on this, but I want to talk to you more about the Xbox and where it's going, and I also want to talk to you about Nintendo and what they unveiled today.
I don't even know what they unveiled.
Oh, you have no idea. So
listen, I've been in like a tech writing induced coma because of all the stuff that's going on.
okay,
So
I'm going to give you a little hint. Do you remember the Sega? What was it? The Dreamcast. There you go.
Dreamcast.
Do you remember the screen on the?
I do.
Okay.
I have one of these in my cellar. With the
Imagine-
little cartridge you would plug in with the screen on it.
Imagine that controller
Yep.
with a 6-inch tablet attached.
Uh,
That is their controller.
Yeah, it is a tablet with buttons.
That's their controller for the next. It's called the Wii U.
Wii U. Okay.
Yeah.
It's very close to the FU, but
So
Yes.
the Wii U, the remote is a tablet.
So it looks okay. I see. I'm looking at a picture of it. So
Yeah,
it's got the classic Nintendo controls on it.
Yeah.
It looks like it's got two of those analog hat kind of things.
Yeah, on the sides.
As well. Okay, that's good.
And now there's a screen, and you don't need the console to play the games. So let's say somebody wants to watch TV.
Yeah.
You could actually play on it becomes, I guess, like a mobile device.
So I will say this for Nintendo. I'm not their target market because, I'm an
Kids
adult.
games.
But they consistently amaze. It's almost like the guys running this company are kids themselves because they don't think along the same brain patterns that the rest of us have.
Yeah, they're not conditioned.
They come up with these things. Everyone will. I've not read anything about this yet, and I'm sure everyone's trashing it. But the funny thing is, they come up with this stuff, and people buy them in record numbers every single time, and people love this stuff. And it's always kids, or now it's adults who grew up on Nintendo stuff. It's interesting. I look at this and I think these guys don't get it.
But maybe they do. I thought the same with the Wii, right? When they came out, they said no controllers are stupid. It's a remote control.
Thing I've ever seen.
And
a nunchuck, right? Even worse. It's they call it the nunchuck.
I remember that the day that thing got launched, I was in the city with a bunch of my friends, and we were walking around and we were talking about what a stupid thing it is. And I bet my entire life that this will not sell anything.
Yeah, so
and boy was I
wrong. 4
wrong.
straight years at the top of the charts.
Yeah. And this is why
everything.
This is why I'm here now. So I could have been, some rich guy, but now I bet my life against this stupid Wii. But I mean that surprised me because it totally broke the mold, right, of what we expect from a console.
Yeah, it's funny that the console itself looks like a mini Xbox 360, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought it was.
It's interesting.
Now, do you think Nintendo does these things, and I don't see anybody, Sony and Xbox, Microsoft don't follow. Having seen this, I don't see that trend's going to change. Maybe somebody else will come along, like Kobe or some weird fourth-party Taiwanese company. No offense to Taiwan, may try to emulate it or something. Because I've seen all kinds of knockoffs of the Wii, but I haven't seen, to their credit, I think Microsoft/Xbox attempt to reproduce the Wii, and I think that's a good move because the thing doesn't even play movies or anything. It's a family machine that doesn't do much for the family other than bowling.
It's pretty.
You think
pure,
it's
right?
good that Microsoft continues to stay in that blinders? I'm looking for the right word because I don't want to say that in a negative way. Because it's obviously Xbox is the best platform out there, but they didn't fall for trying to make nunchucks. They went innovation with the Kinect instead of the chucks or the Sony motion things.
Right.
You think that's continuing to be a good direction for them, or should they stop and look at Nintendo type innovation every once in a while?
They're never going to be Nintendo, so forget that. And by the way, even if they were able to successfully copy some Nintendo thing, the Nintendo people don't care about that. You saw that famous video. It was like a cartoon where the woman calls and she wants the iPhone, but all they have is this HTC thing, and she says, "Yes, but is it an iPhone?" And
Yeah.
This is better than
Brilliant
the iPhone.
cartoon.
It does this, and yes, but is it an iPhone? No, then I don't want that. That's the way Nintendo people are. They don't want it. If it's not Nintendo, they don't care. If it is Nintendo, all over it. No, I mean Microsoft. The video game market is weird for them because there's obviously this core component of hardcore gamers, the guys who like shooters and things like that. But then, they come out with these stats where I think it was like 40% of the people or 40% of the time spent using an Xbox 360 console now is not even video game related. These people are doing other things, apparently watching Netflix movies.
Netflix, yeah.
So in that way, it's sort of like the PC market where they have multiple masters, that their console has to do all these different things. The promise of the Xbox 360 in the beginning was never met by the reality because that first console was so loud and it just wasn't something you would stick in your den and be happy with watching a movie. But now that they've fixed that, I think they're in a very good place. I mean, I think the natural end game for the 360 is for them to eventually integrate that Kinect stuff just into the console and sell it as a single piece. But it's interesting to me how long this thing has lasted and will continue to last, despite the fact that if you were to look at the hardware specs now, which seemed very forward-leaning at the time, they seem a little dated in some ways compared to the PC stuff. But, that's the advantage of a mature platform, the developers understand it better and so forth, and they're able to wring more performance and graphic fidelity and so forth. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting market because it's so specific. The console is no longer just for video games. The console is now a media hub.
I would love for this. Like I said, I'd give anything to use this as my cable set-top box. I wish that's something I could do. I wish that was an option.
Well, what was that thing? Time
Yeah,
Warner.
I hope it does evolve into that.
Well, Time Warner and Verizon came on stage together, and they said they're going to make their media available to all these different devices, and we really haven't seen that happen yet, especially for FiOS. Yeah. And then when we did see that happen with Time Warner, they were threatened with lawsuits.
Sure.
So I mean,
it's going to take a while. They're all struggling to sort out the rights and who gets infringed on in what situation and all that stuff. But I mean, it's just like anything else media related, whether you're talking about DRM and music or videos or whatever through iTunes Store, and there's a lot of hands in the pie. So I think we're going to get there, but I don't know if it's going to happen in the Xbox 360 timeframe, unfortunately. But
before we wrap up, Paul, go ahead. I have a question, and you have a question. You go first.
Okay. Because we hadn't had Paul on in a while since probably Windows Phone 7, after it came out, actually, but before, and then I guess right after your book, Paul. But you've mentioned Mango in one of your websites, WindowsPhoneSecrets.com and so forth. I just wanted to give you opportunity, anything you want to expand on that. How are your thoughts currently with Windows Phone 7? And are you happy, unhappy with the whole Mango thing?
Well, I mean, obviously, Windows Phone 7 in some ways has had a difficult first year, but I think the thing we need to keep in perspective is that, Microsoft was late to the market. They started over from scratch. I think that the thing they came out with originally, which is what we're still running, is incredibly innovative still. I mean, you look at some of the stuff that Apple introduced, and you're thinking, yep, already have that in Windows 7, or Windows Phone 7. Yep, already have that in Windows Phone 7. I mean, it's funny to me that they're copying from Windows Phone 7 now already. Twitter integration and so forth. Cute. So the camera thing was the best one, because that was one of the places where Microsoft was able to very clearly draw a differentiator between Windows Phone and the iPhone. And now in iOS 5, they're going to fix that because it is actually a very big hole for them. I think that, obviously, the cynical view would be Mango is probably what we sort of hoped we would have seen with V1 for Windows Phone. But, I mean, given the realities of the schedule, obviously they couldn't do that. So I think they're going to be in fine shape. I mean, I watched the iOS stuff during this keynote at the WWC very closely because I wanted to see that really sets the stage for where that platform is going to be for the next year, So where will iOS be at the end of this year, when Mango comes out? And we saw that in iOS 5. And we still don't know everything that's going to be in Mango, but I still look at them side by side and I think Microsoft's in good shape. Mm-hmm. From a functional or comparative standpoint. Obviously the sales have not caught up, and hopefully that will happen with Nokia or whatever, but they certainly deserve great success. I think Windows Phone is an amazingly innovative platform, and I think for a lot of people, if you just use it, you see it immediately, how great it is.
And now it's available for Sprint, which is what I was waiting for.
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's on all the carriers now.
So my question was going to be, and I actually, it's not really mine. It's one of the viewers. Your opinion on the iCloud and their music service on the cloud for Apple.
Yeah.
So pretty much what they're saying, and in a way, I was looking at it. I'm like, well, $25 a month, $25 for the year. You get to put your stuff on there. I guess this is their way getting the record company to kind of give up on fighting the piracy and saying, hey, listen, you're not going to get money from them anyway. These people have downloaded the stuff. They ripped it. They're never going to pay you a dime, so might as well get something from them.
Yep.
Do you think people are going to start converting their stuff over to the cloud? I mean, this is pretty interesting that they're saying, well, it doesn't matter what you've done with it, where you got this stuff. You could have gone to Napster from 10, 15 years ago and still have these MP3s. If we have it in our library and you're tagged properly with your IDE tagging, you're going to be able to put it on.
Well, yeah.
ID3, I should say, not IDE.
I uploaded my music collection to Amazon and to Google.
Yeah, I put mine on Google.
and I'll upload it to Apple, when I can. These things are not ubiquitous yet, but one thing I've been careful to do in the last couple of trips is bring along some device, an Android phone or whatever, where I can access these services and see what that experience is like. We've driven around in the car, connected the device to the car stereo via Bluetooth, and streamed off of those services in the car, just driving around to see how it worked, see how it compared to satellite radio, quality-wise, whether there were dropouts and so forth. There are always going to be people who doubt that this is the future, but be very clear, this is the future. There's no doubt about it. It's now. It's happening right now. I have spent, and you probably have spent, a massive amount of time, a stupid amount of time, doing things like managing photos or music or working with those tags and fixing the album art. And you blow away your computer and you copy over your music library, and iTunes doesn't have album art for some stuff, so you go download the album. I've done this again and again and again.
I've gone through every possible tagging software, with everything you can imagine, and I'm still missing stuff. So
I've ripped my entire collection twice. I have created and recreated playlists manually in many cases. Just trying to clean this. It's stupid. It's just stupid. And, computers are supposed to make your life easier, and I think when you look at this kind of thing, it's just like cloud computing for a business. You say to this business, look, you make widgets. Why are you managing email in-house? Why do you have the server infrastructure? Why do you have this? I mean, this is not what you're about. So us as people, just as individuals, why are we wasting time managing all this stuff on our computers? People will say, well, what if Google's data center goes down? To which I would say, well, what if your hard drive goes down in your computer? I mean, I want my stuff in the cloud. I want the important bits replicated out to whatever devices I have. I want ubiquitous, bandwidth and availability, of course. But I mean, we're pretty close to that. And I haven't done it completely, partially because I still sync with devices that require applications, like Apple devices. So what I'm hoping for iCloud is that I can put my collection in the cloud. I'll never be able to not install iTunes, I guess. I was hoping that would be the case. I was hoping that they were literally going to create a web-based version of iTunes. Just so I never had to update that pig again or deal with it again. But okay, so apparently that's not the case. But it would be nice to buy a device, sync to the cloud, have it happen over Wi-Fi, and have my stuff on there and not have to think about it, So I had my hopes along that line. I don't actually believe that what Apple's doing is demonstrably better than what I've seen on Google or Amazon.
No, I don't think it is. I just find it interesting that they've gotten the record labels to agree to this idea where you could upload your stuff.
That's the wild card, right? If you stole or ripped your own music of whatever quality, there is this chance that for $25 you can now get perfectly pristine 256K AAC versions of these files. I guess you could download them. Not re-up your subscription, and possibly for $25 you have recreated your music collection in a superior form. Neat. I mean, I'll do it. I mean, and mine's all legitimate, but the truth is most of it is not that high quality. So I'm curious to see how that works. But I think that's the point. The point, though, is I know people are thinking like that. That there are people who literally did BitTorrent or used LimeWire or Napster back when that was around. They created this huge music collection of, illegal, illicit, music.
Sure.
And they're thinking, I'm going to do this. But the truth is, maybe by the time they get around to using iCloud, I guess the hope is they don't do it. Because why are you downloading it? Why do you even want it? Why do you need it on your computer? You're online.
You really don't, right? You really don't at this point because every device is connected. So
that's what I'm thinking. Yeah,
it's very interesting. Paul, I really appreciate you coming on. It's always a great time when you're on. We have to wrap it up, unfortunately. I may or may not have told my wife I was going to take her out to dinner at 8 o'clock. So I'm 30.
May or may not have been made.
Yeah. So I'm sure I'm going to deny it to her in about 5 minutes and say, no, I said 8:35.
Just as long as you don't say that I said something about your wife.
I'm going to tell her you said, no, don't take your wife
Google
out.
Thing.
The whole Google thing. It's already going bad.
Google TV.
Paul, winsupersite.com. Everybody could check out your blog. I go there every day. I read the articles. Amazing stuff. I absolutely love the site. I know Tom is a big fan as well. And I can't wait to do this again.
Yeah, no, me too. I enjoy coming on. Thank you very much.
It's great. People should check it out again. winsupersite.com. Also, we're going to have this posted on our website within the next couple hours on gfqnetwork.com. Also in rotation on replay at gfqlive.tv. Tom, any final things?
No. Just thanks again to Paul for coming on, and so that I'm not the only guy that supports Microsoft. Thanks for coming on and
Yeah.
giving more support. And anybody, again, Paul is available to watch. Not widescreen as well on Thursdays on with Leo on the Twit network. But no, thanks again. It's been a while. Hopefully we have you back sooner if you're up to it. But thanks again.
Yeah, anytime. No, thank you very much.
Great, and we'll see you all next week. Good night, everybody.